here are some facts that are a little bit uncomfortable for a lot of people to acknowledge or to come to terms with. In 2012, Mitt Romney won the white male vote by a larger margin than Ronald Reagan did. Not in 1980, in 1984, when he won 49 states on the way to a 20-point national win. The white male vote in this country is maxed out for the Republican Party. It is. It's not going to go any further towards the Republican Party, and yet Mitt Romney lost in 2012. Why did he lose? Well, changing demographics are a big part of the story. Definitely a gender gap that he faced is part of the story. And we as conservatives have to come to terms with the fact that we don't necessarily need to change what we believe or what we say, but the current way that we're messaging it, getting people to buy into it, is not working for populations that are going and are going to make it impossible for a conservative ever to be elected to the White House again if things don't change. So this next panel that we have is here to talk about how we address those challenges. How do we reach those voters that we need to reach with a good conservative message? So I'd like to welcome to the stage, the moderator is going to be Amanda Owens. We are also going to have Krista Kafer, who's a radio show host here in Denver on our Salem station, KNUS, and one of our front page contributors to Red State, Sara Gonzales. Let's give them a warm round of applause as they come to the stage.
Hello, hello. What a great second day it's been. Has everyone had a great time? So I'm so excited to talk today with these wonderful women about how we can better reach conservative, bring conservatism to millennials and women. That's something I feel very passionately about. That's what my organization feels very passionately about, so I'm so excited to be here. I'm absolutely tired of hearing that women and young people can't be conservatives. And I'm really tired of hearing that the conservative movement is full of old white men. We as conservatives know that women and young people do not need the federal government to help them succeed. Conservatives value independence, life, individualism, the free market, and the right to bear arms. Conservative values are things that benefit the lives of both men and women and not just one or the other. And it certainly doesn't have an age requirement. How do we message our principles and our ideas to young people and women and show them that our ideas allow them the best opportunity to unleash their true potential? We have two wonderful women here today that are going to talk about how we can effectively communicate the ideas to these two groups. Leon briefly introduced them, but we have Sara Gonzales here in the Reagan red, and She is a front page contributor here at Red State and owns a health insurance brokerage firm, and she has been a political activist since her college years and works on local elections in her hometown of Dallas. And we have Krista Kafer, and she is the co-host of Kelly and Kafer on 710 KNUS, a Denver Post columnist and a professor at Colorado Christian University. She has spent 9 years in the Capitol working for the Heritage Foundation and for 2 members of Congress. So we're going to go ahead and start the discussion. We were just backstage talking, and we were talking about how, we really love being women. And conservatism can be feminine, despite what the left wants you to know. We were talking about how we love to talk about girl things, but we can also school you in a policy debate, too. So we're very excited to be here. Being a young woman involved in conservative activism, Sara, what are the problems you run into when you're out there trying to spread the message?
Right, so a lot of it is what you just briefly touched on, just right off the bat not being taken seriously. So I am involved in a lot of the local elections in Dallas, and I do a lot of door-to-door knocking for candidates that I'm out trying to help spread their message. So I'll go up to a door and I'll have a man answer it, and he's nice, he's pleasant, but he tries to kind of catch me. So he'll kind of quiz me on the issues, and, well, but what does he think about this? And, well, what is this really? And it's like the look on his face when I actually know the answer. He's like shocked that I know the answer. So I would really say that the biggest problem is just not being taken seriously right off the bat. I'm into fashion, and I'm okay with that. I'm into makeup, and I'm okay with that. And I think that a lot of people, they see that, and then they just kind of write you off as like the dumb cheerleader type. And it's sad, but I feel like it's a sad truth. So I would say that that's what I run into.
And I know with my organization, and I know you probably feel this well, there's nothing more empowering than proving those people wrong.
Right,
that
right,
think you can't hold your own.
Exactly.
And Krista, as a conservative radio host and a columnist for a mainstream newspaper, how do you communicate differently for different audiences?
Well, and I think this is key when you think about talking to different people. If you're talking to other conservatives, you can use the conservative words that we're so used to, liberty, patriot, all the different words that we use with each other work very well with other conservatives. But if you're going to be a missionary and you're going to go out to people who aren't conservative or who might be moderate or maybe completely apolitical, I challenge you to use different language. And so when I'm a radio show host, I'm on conservative air. We do have some liberal listeners, but for the most part, it's mostly conservatives. When I write for the Denver Post, I'm writing primarily for moderates and liberals. So what I do very often is I start off with sort of a gentle start to something. I remember writing something on the abortion issue. I kind of moved into it slowly, talking about ultrasounds, talking about the little image, that precious image, and how that has opened a window into the womb and a window into the imagination of everyone who sees that image. So it's kind of a soft move into the topic. And so I would suggest that when you're talking to conservatives, you can really kind of be yourself. But when you talk to people who aren't conservative, think about how you can move into that message in a way that's a little bit more gentle, rather than sort of double-barreling it with your logic and superior facts. You know what I mean? Instead, start with a story. Humanize that situation. If you're talking about, agricultural policies that the Obama administration has done, start by talking about a farmer that you know who can't use all of his land. If you're going to talk about Obamacare, rather than kind of come out with stats and statistics and superior logic, instead kind of move in with saying, a friend of mine lost their health care. They got a letter in the mail saying that it no longer worked, that it was no longer consistent with Obamacare. And so the government basically made them lose their health care, and then they had to get a more expensive package that didn't have their doctor as part of their insurance. And I'm concerned she's suffered from cancer before, and she wants to be able to see her doctors, and now she can't. Start with a story. Find a way to sort of slowly move into your point rather than kind of rushing right into it. And that's kind of the technique that I use when I'm writing for the Denver Post.
And what's a conservative conference without referencing Reagan a few times? Reagan always told a good story, so I think storytelling is an awesome way to effectively communicate conservatism. What about you, Sarah? You are a front page contributor for Red State. That's a little bit more of a friendlier audience. There's not really,
Sometimes.
Right, but it's more of conservative activism. How do you communicate differently for the different audiences, the different facets of the conservative movement?
So I think it really is a lot of what Krista was saying. You have to know your audience. That's huge. You have to know your audience. You have to know who you're talking to in order to know how to convey your message. So, I did a speaking event a few months ago, and it was just for a millennial organization. And, I don't want to pander, right? But so there's a good distinction here to make. You don't want to pander because we're always on to the left about that, right? They're shameless about it. But you do want to relate to them. I mean, you want them to feel comfortable around you, right? So it's like, okay, what can I do to break the ice here? So I purchased a selfie stick, and I got it, and we took, I turned around and we took a selfie, and they loved it, and it turned out really great. It was a really great event. So I just think things like that, you have to know your audience, you have to know who you're talking to, and you have to, not pander, but cater to what they want to hear. So if you're talking to, again, younger people, and they're interested in conservative ideas, you're not, you may want to talk to them about, education or the student loan, debt stuff, and maybe not go full into, the gay marriage part. Right. So, I mean, you've got to know who you're talking to, and I think it's really important to start off on a good foot and talk about where you're going to find common ground instead of focusing on trying to pull them to your side on maybe some other issues that you don't find common ground on.
Right. I think y'all both make great points, and with FFL, we put out some articles, and we kind of gauge on what social media platforms we push those articles on, because, Facebook's is more for baby boomers, Instagram and Twitter are more for younger people, so we kind of, know what messages resonate, and it's all conservatism content. But we just try to, play to the people that we know are going to, really want to hear that message.
Right.
So when talking, this is for the both of you guys, when talking about conservative ideas to women and young people, have you found that there's a certain tone or a certain style that works best? And Sarah, we'll start with you.
Honestly, I haven't, because, while we're all women and there are, issues that probably we can find common ground on that we all care about, we still all come from, different backgrounds and different lifestyles and different places. So it would be hard to pinpoint one particular tone. I mean, I can tell you how I am. I just want you to shoot me straight, and talk to me like I'm just like, anyone else. So I can say that speaking for myself, but I try not to box any kind of group into one. Okay, this tone is going to work for this group specifically, and this tone is going to work for the other group, and just kind of try to relate to them as an individual more.
Awesome. Krista?
So when it comes to young people, I'm also a college professor, and I'm about twice as old as my students. So I try not to be hip, because if you're old and you try to be hip, they sort of see through that, right?
Like Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, it's like you're just not hip. So on the other hand, I don't assume that the cultural references that work for me, since I was coming of age in the 80s, are going to work for them. Whether it's Ronald Reagan or I don't know, Def Leppard music, or, certain movies that are common to those of us in the 80s, I don't assume that they're going to have those same cultural references. So I may use some of their cultural references in a way that's still authentic, because I don't want to try to seem hip. I tend to cop a very wry tone with them, because, I don't know, young people love sarcasm. I don't know what it is. But, and so that's kind of the tone I take with them. The tone I take with women is a little bit different. There are women who are a little more thick-skinned, but I find that when I'm communicating to suburban women, women who are educated, I soften my tone in the sense that when I talk about President Obama, I refer to him as President Obama as opposed to just Obama. I don't use words like socialist per se. I don't use harsher language. I'm not really a harsh language person, but I tend to soften it slightly, because I know that my message, they will not be able to hear my message if I put a stumbling block in the way. And so whether it's in my column, which is read primarily by people that are moderate to left, or when I'm talking with women, and I really, there's preaching to the choir speech, and then there's, I would say, missionary to the masses speech. When you're doing preaching to the choir, you can assume that we all have this certain common ground, common words, common references. I do preaching to the choir to a degree when I'm on the air for my radio show, but when I'm writing for the Denver Post or out and about talking to people who are on the other side, I'm using what is sort of missionary to the masses speech, which means that I'm softening my tone, I'm being more respectful. I mean, I'm a pretty respectful person, but I tend to be respectful. I tend to ask a lot of questions. I tend not to make assumptions. My goal is to create common ground and then to open up their mind that maybe, just maybe, certain conservative values, principles, and policies might be for them. And I found that it's very effective. So particularly, I don't want to single out men here, but I do find that when you're talking to your, liberal sister at Thanksgiving, pulling out the double-barreled, superior logic and facts in a kind of harsh tone may not go over as well as you'd like. Instead, a little softer, a little more question asking, show some respect. Referring to her candidate of choice as the devil might not work. Just saying, and again, just I think respect in a slightly softer tone.
If I could add something to that that you just said, question asking, I think is huge. A lot of when I try to do, I'm engaging in some kind of activism. Something that I try to remember from my sales background is to ask questions. That's really huge. People want to know that you care about what, where they come from and their ideas, and you can't do that unless, you listen and ask them questions. So I think that the question asking really is huge.
Well, and the question asking puts the onus on them to
Right.
prove their point. So if somebody just says, I love Obamacare, instead of launching in with, that's idiotic, here's why you should hate Obamacare, you say, so what do you like about it?
Yep.
And if they say, well, I do like the fact that my 26-year-old loser son can stay on my insurance, that's when you say, well, what if there was a way to enable people to be insured that would maybe open up options for that kind of coverage, but wouldn't boost the prices the way Obamacare has done. And what that does is it plants a little seed of doubt in their mind that may grow over time. Think of it as sort of, planting a seed, because you're not going to convert somebody in 5 minutes. You're not going to be like, yeah, let me tell you all about Obamacare, and have that person leave that conversation being like, I am going to go become a Republican, and I hate Obamacare, and where's my GOP bumper sticker? Like, that's not going to happen in 5 minutes. But if you can plant a seed that maybe there's a flaw with Obamacare and maybe we could do better, that's a home run.
Yeah, I say that when you're asking a question, it's always a good thing, because either their answer you're going to learn something from, or they're going to learn something because as they're answering you, they're realizing maybe something's not quite right with their logic. So
Exactly.
Cool. So when you're talking to women specifically, is there, generational differences and kind of different tones or styles you might take, when focusing on the age of the woman that you're talking to? You can go ahead and start with you.
So my generation, I'm, without giving my exact age, I'm a Gen Xer. And so when I'm talking to Generation X folks, they're going to have probably a similar value set, whether they're liberal or conservative. We have certain common references. When I talk to women who are in the generation above me, I can't make certain assumptions, and I also need to be understanding that what they grew up with was different than me. I, for the most part, have not had the kind of sexism and glass ceilings that women in their 60s have fought through. Not all women, but a lot of women in their 60s fought for some very significant things and won those things. And I think I have to acknowledge that they were the first, not the very first into the fields, but they were groundbreaking. And even though I'm not fighting those same battles, and I have a very good relationship with men, even though I work in a male field, when they make certain statements about, how proud they are of Hillary Clinton, it would be imprudent of me to just then launch into all the reasons that Hillary Clinton is a terribly flawed candidate and unsuitable for the job of presidency, without acknowledging that in their mind, this is a big step for them. If I ignore that, I'm kind of disrespecting what they've done. And so I need to say, yeah, it would be great to have a first female president, and I think she is breaking new ground here. I do have concerns, however, that she doesn't represent all women, and I feel like her value set doesn't represent me. So yeah, that's a little bit, it acknowledges something, but then it kind of starts to bring in the fact that I have serious concerns about this candidate.
yeah, I think, just doing what I do for a living, a generational difference that I have noticed is just kind of the social media age. So the younger people are, they're so used to shooting off their opinion, right away, going to Twitter, going to Facebook and shooting off their opinion and not really, engaging in a face-to-face conversation. And I think that can be a little off-putting to the older people who are not used to that kind of harshness, I guess. So I think that it is important for the young people to remember that there is nothing, face-to-face conversation cannot be replaced by anything. I think that that's huge. I think that getting in front of someone and talking to them about why you believe what you believe in, they're going to listen to you, and it's going to be a lot more well received than just leaving it to social media. Social media is huge, and it's huge for all of us in this room because it has helped us spread the conservative message in places where maybe we couldn't before. But I mean, I just think that it's important to understand that difference and figure out how to find a happy medium.
One thing I run into is that there's this common misconception by some people that they think all conservatives fit in just one box. And that is not true. If we lined everyone up here and we did a step forward for where you stood for or against an issue, I guarantee we all wouldn't end up at the same place at all. So why do you think it's wrong to assume all minorities, all young people, and all women think alike?
Well, I mean, it's prejudice, really, first of all. But again, we all come from different backgrounds. So, just because I'm a woman doesn't mean that, I really care whether or not my health insurance company is paying for my birth control. I mean, it's just, an individual's ideas are going to be shaped much more by their background, by their lifestyle, by how much money they make, what they can afford to do and can't do. And so I think that it's a lot more important to focus on the individual, and not putting them in a box, obviously, but just where they come from and what they're about, what's important to them, what their priorities are. All women don't have the same priorities,
right.
So.
One of the organizations that I really like is the Colorado Women's Alliance, and I don't know if Debbie Brown is here, but she is around some of the time. And Colorado Women's Alliance, even if you're not in Colorado, check them out because they've done groundbreaking work in how to communicate with women. And they also do some polling. And women, whether it's women on the right, women on the sort of in the middle, have a variety of different views about a variety of things. And a certain politician a couple of years ago made a very bad assumption that all women care about is birth control. And so he and all of the outside organizations that were doing commercials for him and raising money for him I think they ended up doing 10 separate commercials on television having something to do with birth control, and that the opponent was going to steal your birth control, take all your birth control away. And it ended up becoming mock-worthy. And a local columnist, basically, I think she was a political news writer, dubbed him Mark Uterus. His name is Mark Udall, former Senator Mark Udall, then after that called former Senator Mark Uterus. And it's because he just assumed that all women care about is birth control. And not only is that incredibly, prejudice, demeaning, pathetic, disrespectful, but it backfired. So, I mean, there are a lot of issues that our women are concerned about, including women's health. But if you think about it, half of women out there are pro-life, half support abortion. And among those that do support, most of them want some kind of restrictions. So it's important to keep these things in mind, and it's something that I think has been lost on the left.
All right, so what are some assumptions you think people make when communicating with women and young people?
Well, I mean, again, just their credibility, I think is huge. And I think that it is doing a great disservice to the party because, if you think about it, obviously, we're all not going to be around forever. So when I'm sorry to break it to you, but so the young people, at least, I mean, women too, but young people who are trying to embrace these conservative ideas, when they feel like they're getting pushed away, it's off-putting to them, and we're doing ourselves a disservice because the party needs to be led by, new leaders eventually, and we're not all going to be around. And So I think that it's really important to listen to what they have to say, make sure that they know that they may not have the life experience that some other people do, but there's still a spot for them at the table. Because otherwise, the left has been fantastic at recruiting young people. I mean, they have young people as their face, So I just think that we really need to be careful about treating the young people like they don't know enough, or they don't know as much as someone who has more life experience. And then again, just making sure that we're talking about, we're finding our common ground. We're talking about what we can agree on first. Let's build that bond there. And then later on, we can figure out, where can we meet with some of the other things that, young people may feel a little differently than an older person would about, gay marriage or something like that. Some of the social issues, I think that we maybe need to just, instead of harping on those so much and trying to force an agreement there, let's talk about the common ground and, make sure that they feel like they're being heard.
Krista?
Yeah, I was thinking about Bernie Sanders, and catch me later, I could do a really good impression. But Bernie Sanders, he did a great job. I mean, he's a total Looney Tune, but he did a great job of marketing to young people, if you watch some of his commercials. And I think, making sure that the conservative message has that kind of cutting edge feel to it, that kind of revolutionary feel to it. And if you think about it, it is revolutionary. I mean, the idea that all men and women are created equal and endowed by their creator with certain rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That was revolutionary a couple hundred years ago, and it still is. But how do we market it, keep it fresh, and get it out there to young people so that they get it too? I mean, we always have to resupply the bloodline of the conservative and libertarian message, and getting young people in here and getting them excited about something that is genuinely revolutionary. Because I tell you what, despotism and you could say slavery in a sense, or serfdom, as I think Hayek called it, that's not revolutionary. That is the state of humankind for 10,000 years or whatever, 40,000 years of human beings dominating other human beings. Human beings working together as equals, that's revolutionary. So we got to get the message out there.
Unfortunately, I think we're out of time, but let's give a round of applause to them. They're awesome. Thank you. Good.